What up, family? How you doing? This is Theo E.J. Wilson talking about the Black conservative movement again, because this has to be addressed. Sorry about the technical difficulties before, but definitely like, follow, and share. I just fixed the computer problem. Let's get into this, okay? Because this is going to be the first time tuning in for a lot of y'all. And a couple of things have to be addressed, and they have to be addressed concisely. So let's talk about the Black conservative movement real fast. Um, I know that there is this idea in Black America that we are not a monolith. We are not just one kind of people. We have certainly the right to espouse and believe any kind of political ideology that we want to. As free people in this country, free being a relative term, of course, but let's break this down once and for all. I had some friends that posted about the supposedly growing movement of the Black conservative momentum in this country. And that movement has been debunked pretty thoroughly. The idea that they call Black folks who are on the liberal spectrum of things, slave minded and on the plantation, I guess it feels new to this generation, but actually, that's a very, very old trope among Black conservatives. They've been saying that those who are liberal and Black are on a plantation. And this has been going on since the 60s, man. The issue is that you can't call somebody a slave if you just trade in one plantation for the next. Like, you can't just be like, y'all over there are wrong, but let's talk about our masters over here because that makes us smarter than you. No, 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 no. And of course, we all know that the lightning rod of the new Black conservative movement is none other than Miss Candace Owens herself. Candace Owens has attracted a lot of attention as of late, and I think that is worth addressing because, it don't take a genius to see that she's an attractive young lady. This doesn't take a genius to see that she appears to be articulate on the surface, but there are certain very fundamental hypocrisies of the Black conservative movement that simply cannot be ignored. First of all, like, follow, and share this because this message has to certainly get out there. But the Black conservative movement, being spearheaded nowadays by Candace Owens, you got to look at the person themselves. You know what I'm saying? She's been ethered intellectually, just eviscerated by so many other smart people. We all talked about, and everybody, it went viral when she got checked by T.I., straight up G checked by T.I., when they did the Revolt Summit, when she tried to do a false equivocation of American slavery with other kinds of slavery. That's an argument that was forwarded by another Black conservative named Thomas Sowell. And Thomas Sowell, he has writings that display, like, listen, there's all kind of empires that have had slavery before. When anybody who studied the historiography of American slavery specifically knows that it is a special kind of evil. It was a special kind of diabolical. It's been displayed in many, many books, including this book by Frederick Douglass over here. I got another book by some folks who did a little bit of research around the capitalistic aspects of slavery and how it's still here, and the brutality that was unique to America and those who were setting up empire in the Western world. When Candace Owens gets beat up by T.I. intellectually, when she went on the Joe Rogan podcast and was asked some basic climate change shit, basic climate change information regarding about why the planet is getting warmer, and just the simple questions of, so you don't think that any human activity is having an effect on the climate whatsoever, like all these cars, all these planes and automobiles not having an effect at all. She just regurgitated some very old and played out lines from other climate scientists who have long debated, who have long debunked that. You got Larry Elder, you got Jesse Lee Peterson, who my boy Gazi Kozo recently ethered on his own podcast. There's a lot of supposed momentum, but one thing that they say is that the movement is growing, when in fact about 10% of Black America traditionally has leaned conservative, at least in their voting. And as of late, that number has actually shrunk to 8%. Used to be 10%. Now, under Trump, the Black conservative movement has shrunk to 8%, right? There's been a couple of summits when these young Black folks will go to these Black conservative think tanks. And, it looks like a lot of people when 400 young Black people show up. 400 people is not a lot of people, especially when it comes to a democracy the size of America. This is not something that is viable. And there's a few reasons why Black conservatism is not viable in America. Number one, then the most important thing is that historically, Black people have always been liberal leaning. They've always been liberal leaning. It's just that back in the day, the liberals were called Republicans. That's the issue. You see what I'm saying? So they like to bring back the fact that, of course, the very first Blacks who ever voted, who were ever part of any political activity in America, were actually part of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, in its founding documents, explicitly espoused that their stance against slavery was a fundamental cornerstone of their party. Of course, Black people are going to get involved with that. That was a liberal stance back in those days. Of course it was, you know what I'm saying? And up until the civil rights movement, most Black people were Republicans, but the Republicans were liberals. So saying that Black people used to be Republicans in mass is not saying that Black people have always been conservative in mass. And that just has to be stated out there. Let's see. What's going on, Steve? Steve Rose said, Black conservatives also have large white audience, so they tend to watch, so that they have also say, coming from someone who is half white myself. Yeah, listen, man, here's the issue with Candace Owens. I'm sorry, there was a couple typos in there that made it hard to read. Here's the issue with Candace Owens. Is articulate as she may be, what I think is a blaring tell about the problems with this ideology is that Candace Owens was cited by the Christchurch shooter down in New Zealand in his manifesto of being the one who radicalized him. Candace Owens radicalized the Christchurch shooter. In his manifesto, he points that out clearly and also says that Donald Trump, who she freaking will bend over backwards to support, has been a lightning rod for consolidating white ideology. That's what was in this dude's manifesto. Candace Owens, of course, rebutted and said, I have nothing to do with this. It doesn't matter what you think, Candace. The dude says that you inspired him. These are facts, right? You can't say that he didn't inspire you. You have to be mindful of what you say in this kind of political environment. No one takes these YouTubers, Black conservatives, seriously, no offense. Yo, I have to agree in terms of the Black community, but the white community definitely takes them seriously because if they feel that they're right, they're going to look for Black voices to second their motions and second their notions. You see what I'm saying? The principal question that we have to ask ourselves about the conservative movement is, what are conservatives conserving? What are conservatives conserving, right? These are ideologies that are not native to Black life, right? These ideologies have been set forth by those who was able to set the power, right? And uneducated white people who can easily be fooled, bro, yes. Uneducated white folks who can easily be fooled, of course. That's been the whole crux of Trumpism. You see what I'm saying? But conservatives are conserving, and I like Claude Anderson's definition of conservatives. They're conserving power and wealth in the hands of those who have already had it, period. A lot of these folks are Christian, you know what I'm saying, and like died in the wool. Christians been Christian, their mom Christian, their grandma Christian. And these Christian ideals have a lot to do with, keeping Christ in the schools, making sure that prayer is not eliminated from public life, making sure that new ideas about family, homosexuality, and things of that nature don't get a foothold, for the sake of our children. And there's a lot of Black people who vibe with that, especially if they are the evangelical type. But by and large, that movement is asking, if it wants to grow, it's asking Black America to choose between its common sense about what we know as oppressive people and their identity as Black folks. You're not going to get a lot of traction in our community if you're asking us to choose between those two very fundamental things. You see what I'm saying? Larry Elder, I used to tune into Larry Elder and listen to what he had to say. And what Larry Elder says is actually demonstrative of a lot of the things that Black conservatives suffered emotionally. See, we're going to go deeper than ideology. What is the emotional life of a Black conservative like? Of course, there's varied as the people who are in the movement. But one thing that I noticed is that the dyed-in-the-wool hardcore Black conservatives are immune to being called coon, sellout, and Uncle Tom. I had to learn that. They are not swayed by being told that they are betrayers to their people. And why is that? I started to think, what is the reason that Black conservatives are not moved and swayed by being called coon, sellouts, and Uncle Toms by their own people? And then it hit me that one of the hardest things to endure if you are Black is Black rejection. And if you feel that black folks are a cold place to live, you're going to go with white folks who seem to be the warmer place to live. You see what I'm saying? So emotionally, these folks, a lot of black conservatives have had enough of what they feel is hypocrisy in the black community, right? We talk about Black Lives Matter, but what about when we kill each other? They're the ones who will espouse certain viewpoints like this, right? And one thing that they say is that they are against the tokenism that the liberals put on black folks in the way we are used as a political football. And on the surface, that sounds like a valuable and viable argument until you start to look at how black conservatives are repeatedly tokenized by white conservatives, tokenized left and right. Even Trump saying, hey, look at my African American. There goes my African American, right? You see what I'm saying? They're tokenized all over the place, all up and down. But for some reason, that doesn't bother them. The thing I find most glaring about black conservatives is that they have to do a lot of mental and intellectual gymnastics when confronted with hard historical facts. Like I said, black folks in general have always been liberal in by and large. It's about over 90% here, even when those liberals were called Republicans, right? Always been that way. It's always been the way in which we lean. See what I'm saying? They bring the tokenism on themselves, says Matt Edwards. Thank you very much, yo. By the way, like, follow, share. Thank you very much for spreading this video out, y'all. But yeah, they bring the tokenism on themselves. Why? Because they're entering spaces where there aren't a lot of black people to begin with. So they almost can't avoid tokenism. When Candace Owens says that she is a social conservative, what she's trying to say is that she's keeping a closed mind to a lot of the things that black people are espousing and has adopted the narrative. She's literally taken this narrative hook, line, and sinker. Our complaints about America are just us being lazy. That's what they believe, right? Now, looky here. Sometimes black conservatives can lay out a couple of points, right? And there's a lot of things that we don't consider. So let me try to be even-handed in this. There are opportunities in America that you will get when you're a black in America, simply because you're in America, that you're not going to get in other places. We are the richest group of black folks on the planet. That is undeniable. We have borderline $2 trillion worth of spending power. Could we be spending that power, spending that money better? Yes. But what they're asking us is alignment. They're asking from us alignment with forces that are harboring racist individuals in this country by and large. Is there white racist liberals? Are there white racist liberals out there? Of course there are. You see what I'm saying? But when you're asking the ideology, when you ask about policy that has specifically benefited, benefited the black community, what they'll do oftentimes is they'll cite, well, black unemployment is down under Donald Trump. Specifically, we have more black entrepreneurs than we've ever had, right? And they overlook certain facts. That the reason why black unemployment is down is because blacks oftentimes are so critically unemployed that they're not even being counted in the rolls. They're not even being part of the system that actually counts unemployed people. When you talk about chronic unemployment, you're talking about being only, you have to register as even looking for the role, looking for work, looking for unemployment, right? That's not even a part of a lot of people, especially with structural inequality in certain places, and the lack of job opportunities is just what it is. And we're looking at, if black people are looking like they're more employed, it's because they're taking on 3 and 4 jobs to stay afloat. And all you have to do is be employed for 1 hour a week to say that you have a job. These aren't jobs with benefits. These aren't jobs that have retirement plans or 401ks. These are jobs that are simply at or below minimum wage oftentimes, but they count on the roll. So it looks like more blacks are employed. Black entrepreneurship is up. Well, the movement for black entrepreneurship has been on the rise. It's been on the up and up ever since the cultural movement pushed by guys like Claude Anderson and Boyce Watkins, you know what I'm saying? Regardless of what you think about them personally, they've at least been putting that narrative out there, and that we have actually started to look for ways to employ ourselves, especially because of the way that having a felon in your checkbox makes sure that a lot of our community members don't get employed. So us being looking for entrepreneurship opportunities ain't got nothing to do with who's president right now. In fact, if you look at the trajectory of black unemployment numbers actually going down, that started under Obama. You're looking at Obama's momentum. You can't name one specific policy that Donald Trump actually targeted for black Americans that had the effect that they're claiming. You see what I'm saying? So this is all happenstance. They got to do a lot of mental gymnastics in order to say that they are actually that they can actually say that Trump is the reason why blacks are more employed than they used to be. You see what I'm saying? So all of this goes to a very, very fundamental point. You cannot ask Black people to choose between their instincts for survival and aligning themselves with the ideology of those who actually are statistically, ideologically aligned with 75% of the terrorist attacks in this country. You see what I'm saying? Especially racist terrorist attacks. Woke culture is asking Black folks to be like a little more self-aware about our place in this country. Now, how are you going to bring those Black folks over if they're choosing between your ideology and their own self-respect? Does that make sense? 84 million Americans make minimum wage and are listed as part-timers. Correct, but they're still listed as having jobs. You see what I mean? And so this is another fundamental problem about Black conservatives, right? What are conservatives conserving? If you ask me, the true Black conservatives are actually the Black militant wing. The Black militant wing, and those of us who are like more on the militant side, are the real Black conservatives. Why? Because you'll hear better economic talking points from Umar Johnson than you will Larry Elder. You'll hear better economic talking points when it talks about conserving our dollars, when it talks about conserving our culture, when it talks about conserving our history. These talking points are coming from the militant wing, who actually love Black folks enough to ask us to look out for who we are and who we've been. You see what I'm saying? So the hypocrisy is just all over the place. When you look at folks like Jesse Lee Peterson, I listened to his podcast before, and it was hard to stomach, but they keep these Christian ideals in the forefront of their talking points, in that we should love everybody, when we know that loving everybody is effectually ineffective. We know that this does not work, especially when it comes to systems of oppression. Of course, they deny that there are systems of oppression. They deny that racism may have mechanical components that affect large swaths of people. They have a hard time acknowledging that, right? But the fact is that there are books that you could read, like The Half Has Never Been Told, that goes into how structural racism set up the American economic landscape is the way that it is today. You could read books like The Color of Law, which talks about how housing and income equality has been built into the caste system of race in this country, up into, and like they're not just talking about the 60s, they go all the way to how Black homeowners were targeted for predatory loans. We're talking about past 2000, we're talking about like 2008. You see what I'm saying? If you ignore these data points, then what you're doing is that you're ignoring the very base of people who would help your movement expand if you call yourself a Black conservative. When you talk about Black conservatism, I was listening to Dr. Amos Wilson. He's talking about conserving our African identity. How about that level of conservatism, right? What we call Black conservatives are not Black conservatives. They're asking us to simply join the white conservative ideology, which has traditionally been racist against us, and not talking about conserving the deeper part of our African identity and our true culture. And they're doing this because there's a disdain that they have for themselves and for Black folks. And calling them a coon, calling them a sellout ain't it. Unfortunately, that shit doesn't work. And unfortunately, we keep on trying it. So how do you win over a Black conservative? That is a question that I've been asking for a whole lot of time. I think Rose and the Black conservative preached. My last comments basically said, if you can't beat them, join them. A lot of people feel like they have to join the Black conservative movement, but they do so at the price of their dignity. Just another example, there was a Black man recently who made national news because he actually tried to be a part of the Black conservative movement. And then with the kind of racist stuff that Trump was talking, and after that shooting that they just had in El Paso, he was like, I can't be a part of these people anymore, right? Asking us to choose between our self-respect and our identity is not a good strategy to grow your movement. And of course, Kanye West joins the bandwagon. You know what I'm saying? Kanye West, who continually falls in the eyes of Black America. Black conservatives find, when they lose favor in Black America, they find a warm voice in pockets of white America. And there's talking points that they're being paid to have. There's platforms that they're able to get on, and because they're so rare, because like they literally rise invisibility because of the very tokenism that they say that they hate from the Democrats. They rise because of tokenism. Like they expand because they're so rare. And if they're articulate, they actually have the ability to reach a large swath of people because, dude, you're like a unicorn at that point, right? So I think conservatives, the true Black conservatives are the militant wing of Black folks because those are the ones who care enough about Black folks to tell you to conserve your life, to watch where you send your children to school, to take control of your economic future, to take control of your military future. You see what I'm saying? All the things that when you talk about the definition of conservative, the definition of conservative is holding to traditional attitudes and values and cautions about change or innovation, typically in relation to politics or religion. Noun, conservative as a noun, a person who is averse to change and holds to traditional values and attitudes, typically in relation to politics. That's what a conservative actually is, right? How far back you trying to conserve, Mr. Black conservative? Where are you going with this? You see, so they have been able to mutate the calls of coon, the calls of sellout, into an idea that says they're doing this because these Black folks over here are hive-minded. These Black folks over here that are calling me a sellout are people who don't want me to be an independent thinker. That's what Kanye bit into specifically. And in fact, Kanye admits that he does not read. He is not somebody who challenges himself intellectually at all. He's somebody who actually sits back and waits for people like Candace Owens to feed him, right? You will never grow this movement, Black conservatives, as long as you are asking folks to align ultimately with Donald Trump. Can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's too many people killed by police. And we ain't talking about even Trayvon. We're talking about Botham Jean. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about all the folks who have recently been killed. You're asking us to ignore that, to say leave the supposed plantation that we're on with the Democrats. You know what I mean? And by the way, like, I'm not ideologically a Democrat at all. What I am is a humanist. And those humanistic values tend to look liberal, but in fact, I'm a humanist, and I specifically side with those who have been historically oppressed and suffered, mainly starting with my own house, and that's Black folks, the descendants of the enslaved. See what I'm saying? That's where my activism begins. And if you want to be real, my conservatism is about conserving our lives, right? Conserving our identities. Black conservatives are literally asking us to buy into another part of white America that is traditionally and currently, contemporarily hostile to us. Hostile to us. You can't do it. The movement will never grow, regardless of what you think that you should lean on in terms of Christian values and whatnot like that. There's Black people leaving the church in droves because of the hypocrisy. So you ain't gonna get folks with a Jesus argument going on around here. That's not what's finna happen. You see what I'm saying? You can sometimes tell sometimes some of these Black conservatives are just talking conservative points for legit clout chasing. How about that? Legit clout chasing. A lot of times, what's going on, Juice? Legit clout chasing going on the Black conservative movement. They're just chasing a different kind of clout. So there's still a kind of love, like no matter how you slice it, Black conservatism, as it's traditionally named in this country, is still clout chasing for a different kind of clout. And white folks, you need look no farther than their audiences. You need look no farther than who's co-signing with them underneath their videos when you look at the comment section. That's all you say. A true Black conservative is somebody like Louis Farrakhan, right? True, I don't get down with everything that he says, but one thing that I can say is that dude is invested in conserving Black life. He's invested in conserving Black dollars and circulating them in Black institutions. That's true Black conservatism. He's talking about conserving African identity. You see, this is the conservatism I'm actually talking about. And these folks that's asking you to vote for freaking Donald Trump and all of these Mitch McConnell type people. In fact, Black conservatism, as they define it, as the folks like Candace Owens defined it, would have a better chance under a president like Mitt Romney, somebody who's a more traditional, moderate conservative, somebody who actually has principles and dignity beyond just his allegiance to his party. Like this dude, if you believe in this, puts country before party. That's why he's one of the few people. You're literally as a Black conservative, you're actually asking Black folks to side with those who are silent in the face of glaring injustice, which is the Republican Party. And that, my friends, is a sinking ship. You gonna ask us to get on a sinking ship, Miss Candace Owens, Larry Elder, Thomas Sowell? You gonna ask us to get on a sinking ship with you? There's a reason why you keep, like, they don't understand. There's a reason why you keep encountering resistance in the Black community. The reason why you keep on encountering resistance is because we, and by and large, have not been able to abuse ourselves of the notion that we are American and are protected by America. There's too many of us that are locked up, too many cousins, too many of us who've experienced microaggressions racially, too many of us who've been called nigger, too many of us who have been followed in shops and freaking, you know what I'm saying, and profiled by the police. You're asking us to ignore all of that for what? Like, what's your carrot, Black conservatives? Like, what is it that you're trying to get? Because like you saying that we're on the Democratic plantation doesn't do it. It's not even close to doing it. That's like us calling you, if you're not affected by us calling you a coon, a sellout, a racist, and self-hating Uncle Tom or whatever like that, we're not going to be affected by you saying that we're on the Democratic plantation. That's what's not going to happen. You see what I'm saying? Where are all these Black conservatives when it comes to helping the Black community? So nowhere to be found. That's another great point. Thank you very much, Matt. If you saw Black conservatives after police shootings in the community, on the ground, if you saw Black conservatives actually trying to start programs to reduce what's called Black on Black crime, which is actually horizontal violence, which is actually something that happens in all communities suffer, but if you saw these Black conservatives in these spaces, you might be able to win some. Like, if you saw them at the crux and in the nuts and bolts of real Black problems and being the leaders on the forefront of solving these real Black problems, you would actually have a chance of recruiting Black folks to the Black conservative movement. You would. But just simply saying that Donald Trump is sent by God, as I heard Jesse Lee Peterson say, that ain't gonna cut it, brother. We know he's not sent by God. You see what I'm saying? We've experienced enough pain in our lives to not join up with somebody who is basically reminiscent of a slave master, 21st century style. See what I'm saying? Our common sense and survival, our common sense and survival ethic will not allow us to align, not in mass, with people who are blatantly racist. People say, well, what racism does Donald Trump have, right? Dude, there have been 2 cases brought against the Trump empire. And this is when his daddy was still in charge. Specifically happened in the 60s, where there was 70s, where there was housing discriminations, charges brought up against the Donald Trump, the Trump organization, because they literally got busted screening calls from Black callers when it was time to rent at the Trump properties, which were oftentimes in Queens, but then ended up being in New York. So what was that? Was that the Department of Justice brought 2 cases against the Trump organization back as early as the 70s, when he's been heard saying stuff like, look, I don't want no Black folks counting no money in my casinos. He said that, right? We have this dude, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that when you look at him enabling physical assault, talking about, you know what we would have done back in the day to a guy like that, they would have carried him out on a stretcher. He was talking about a Black Lives Matter protester. When he talks about beat him up and I'll pay for the legal fees. When you see the video of the sister getting pushed around by grown-ass men in a Trump rally, you're asking us to align with that? No. Black conservatives would do a better job serving in the Black community, like actually showing up, like actually being people who move the needle when it comes to the things that really trouble Black lives. I don't see these people. I don't see Larry Elder out in the freaking sticks of Chi-Town, Chirac. If you look at the people who have been part of like the violence interrupters, the organic Black movements that have been started to change things in their own community, and you look at their politics, they're almost always liberal. Why? Because we know better than to side with these crazy people. See what I'm saying? I don't know how a conservative of any race would answer the fact that the people who are committing the most mass shootings, the people who are the greatest terrorist threat in this country on American soil, FBI, Department of Justice says they commit 75% or more of the terrorist attacks on this country, also are intellectually aligned with you. How do you as a conservative Answer that. See what I'm saying? Like back in the day, there was liberal terrorism. You know, Greenpeace and them like that. The weather on the ground, like they were blowing stuff up. They were ending life. That has long since been the case. Like in my lifetime, I'm almost 40 years old. In my lifetime, that hasn't been the motherfucking thing. You see what I'm saying? Peace and cancer. Help me understand the importance of politics when the deep state and secret societies run the show. Here's what happens. When the deep state and secret societies run the show, what's the importance of politics? First and foremost, imagine dealing with America if you're an ally or an enemy of America, and every 4 years we change faces, right? Bush set a certain policy, and that's how we thought we was going to deal with America. And then Obama came in, and that's how we deal with America. And then Trump came in, and that's how we deal with America. So in a shadow effed up way, the deep state, which is really the intelligence forces and all of that, keeps some kind of continuity in dealing with America. But here's the thing. In a certain way, and I used to be one of the people who was like, yo, man, there ain't basically no difference between the parties. There is some difference between these parties. And that is, at least symbolically, the ideology and the talking points and the climate of the country is the difference in political parties. That is the difference, right? When you have ideology that says, oh, yeah, and the freaking judges, like that also matters. Like when you talk about placing judges, like Trump has appointed so many judges, it's crazy. Like that's one of the reasons why the Republicans won't break with him, even though he's a fucking embarrassment. He's appointing so many conservative judges to high places. When you talk about legality, when you talk about laws, when it talks about setting legal precedents, when it talks about like what can and cannot be gotten away with when it comes to getting money out of politics, when it comes to making sure that the war on drug policies get reversed, political parties have a lot to do with that. Do these motherfuckers like ultimately plan for the liberation of Black folks at all? No, neither one of them do. One of my greatest quotes I ever heard came from Chris Hedges and says, no matter if you're voting Democrat or Republican, there's no way to vote against Goldman Sachs. True, right? Until one of these hyper liberal people get money out of politics and make sure that there's no influence being bought by super PACs, no influence being bought by lobbyists, there really is no difference, right? But the climate of the country is where political parties do actually matter. You see what I'm saying? When it comes to what we can digest in our news cycle, like literally, even if Hillary's crazy ass, and I didn't vote for Hillary either, I voted the third party. A lot of people mad at me about that. But even if Hillary's crazy ass got into the White House, we wouldn't be dealing with this particular brand of bullshit. These racists, these terrorists that are far-right extremists feel empowered when their party and their guy is in power. They feel like they can actually take the steps to commit terrorist attacks as long as the Republicans and Donald Trump is getting carte blanche from the American people. Now, of course, with the impeachment thing, we say that may not be a thing for too damn long, but that's what's really going on. That's where parties matter. Will Black folks end up voting themselves free? No. Can we vote for a little wiggle room in this country while we try to get free? Yes, we actually can. You know what I'm saying? And I was somebody who was dead set against voting. My first voting experience was literally the Bush versus Gore election in Tallahassee while I was in Florida. Like I was in the capital of Florida when they were doing that recount. I was like, fuck it, nothing matters. You know what I'm saying? At the local level, politics absolutely matter. We elected a sister here in Denver named Candy Cedabaka, who was espousally a democratic socialist. We were able to shut down some private prisons here. That affects Black life directly. You see what I'm saying? She's a democratic socialist, ran, I believe, on the Democratic. So in local elections, parties do matter. You see what I'm saying? Climate of the country, parties do matter. Substantively, will America stop being America? No. So, but there is wiggle room. You can vote some wiggle room, though you may not be able to vote some freedom. But if you can get some wiggle room in that shackle, you might be able to get that motherfucker off. That's where it matters. Because if we're resourceful people, if we are people who will survive by any means, then we have to use everything in our environment to get free. And that includes engaging in the political process, sometimes understanding that it will not solve every problem in Black life. It will not. Will it set the energy? Oh, yeah. That's how I see it anyway. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Trump organization was sued twice by the Department of Justice for discriminating against Black people. You can look this shit up. We've been knowing this motherfucker was racist. Ask me to side with him? I don't know, bro. I don't know. I do know. No, the answer is no. I'm not going to side with him. Period. You see what I'm saying? So a true black conservative, the true black conservative voices are those trying to conserve black identity, black culture, and African identity, right? That's coming from the militant wing. A true black conservative actually is somebody like Umar, actually is somebody like any of the brothers and sisters who are talking about, who love black folks enough to ask us to defend ourselves, who love black folks enough to ask us to reinvestigate our cultural identity, our history, and the greatness of us. That's the true black conservative. These motherfuckers calling themselves black conservatives are actually asking us to align with white conservatives because ultimately they think that there's something that we can get from aligning with them, and we just don't see it. You tell me how. You tell me how that tax relief bill for the top 1% help black America, black conservatives. You tell me how no specific policy from the Trump administration has been responsible for all of this supposed improvement in black unemployment, when we know there's just brothers and sisters falling off the rolls, not even being counted. That's why unemployment is going down, when we know that black folks are now having to pick up 3 and 4 jobs. That's why it looks like black folks are more employed. They're not. In fact, they can barely afford benefits because most of these jobs are not living wage, so they have to get multiple jobs to make a living wage. You see what I'm saying? Central Park 5 case, that's another thing. Basics. Thank you for that, Matt Edwards. Basics. Dude spent $80,000 to try to get the death penalty and get these boys executed when they were innocent. Never apologized. Never backed off the point. Never said, oh, I was in a different state of mind then. I thought something was happening. It wasn't. He never retracted that point. Look at my African American over there. Look at my African American. That's him, right? Nah. If black conservatives don't want to be tokenized, then stop being tokenized by conservatives. Because that's how a lot of y'all are getting y'all platform. Y'all are a token Negro in the conservative movement. Basics. Like, it's so obvious. You know what I'm saying? Got to make yourself equate American slavery with other slavery. I was like, okay, I was listening to Thomas Sowell talk about how there was slavery. Thomas Sowell is a very, very conservative black dude, conservative, right? He talked about how they had slavery over here, and this kind of slavery was in China, and this kind of slavery was in Greece, and Rome, and all that stuff. And I'm sitting up here like, read the work of Alado Equiano, who was enslaved by both the Ashanti Empire and enslaved by the British. And he will tell you, American slavery was a different beast altogether from the experience of the slave. And that matters when it comes to transgenerational trauma. That matters on how much you can get free. That matters for your very quality of life. It matters that what he experienced in Africa as slavery and what he experienced in America as slavery was night and day. You can't equate them. That argument Candace Owens was about to give before T.I. shut her down is not a real argument. You can't do that, period. You know what I'm saying? Trump doesn't have it in him to ever apologize. Of course he doesn't. And that's another thing. Thank you very much, Mario. That's another thing. The denialism of the conservatives. The denialism. Like, if you see, think about this real fast, my black conservative friends, if you're listening. It took Trump being stupid enough to not only admit to the crime of trying to leverage foreign influence over Ukraine, but then blatantly asking China to investigate Joe Biden on national TV for this impeachment shit to pick up. Meaning, y'all's denial problem is so bad, you couldn't even see that this dude was crooked. I wouldn't buy a used car from Donald Trump. I wouldn't. Like, I done bought used cars all over the place. I would never buy a used car from Donald Trump. Okay? That's the greasiest motherfucker I've ever seen. But you would buy the idea that he's going to make America great again? Right? This dude was been a crook. There's documentaries that you can watch on him that were made in the early 90s about his corruption from the 80s. You can see this stuff, right? You have to be intellectually dishonest in order to be a black conservative and to be a conservative in this climate in general. They are enabling so much bullshit that I believe that when the pendulum of history finally swings the other way, when this dude's finally out of office, they act like he could be king or something. He could be that he could be president forever. When he's finally out of office, that shit might take the entire Republican Party with them. You asking us to join y'all at the bottom of the political ocean? Nah, not gonna go down, right? You gotta be honest, black conservatives. What are y'all conservatives conserving? Right? Because if it's Christian identity, that's not indigenous to us, right? If it's the way that even marriage is set up, that's actually not indigenous to us. Africans had all kinds of different ways of being married. This nuclear family thing, that's actually an inheritance from colonialization, if you really want to be honest about it, right? Judeo-Christian values, my ass. If Judeo-Christian values work so much, how come they didn't save white folks from being slavers, didn't save them from being conquerors, didn't slave them, they didn't stop them from being genocide committers, right? If those values are really so powerful, it should have worked on them first. Like they should have had the moral superior high ground. We shouldn't have had to have a whole movement for our civil rights against white conservatives. We cannot join them. It's just common sense, right? At this point in time, you can be a conservative without being a hypocrite. Yeah. He said, at this point in time, I don't think you can be a conservative without being a hypocrite. I don't see how you can either, not even a white conservative, right? If you look at how they treated Obama over a tan suit, right? He never tried to leverage foreign influence to investigate a political rival. That's insane. You know, that if Obama admitted blatantly to just like, yeah, we tried to get Ukraine to freaking investigate Joe Biden and what of it, like that shit that Mick Mulvaney did. If Obama and anybody in his staff did anything like that, like they'd be damn near calling for this fool's assassination. See what I'm saying? The hypocrisy is so large. So to be a black conservative is an even larger level of hypocrisy. You can't ask us to join a sinking ship. The movement is shrinking. Y'all have done better under freaking Marco Rubio. Y'all have done better under Jeb Bush, black conservatives. Y'all have done better under freaking Ted Cruz than you're doing under Donald Trump. Period. I mean, at least they're not blatantly racist. They might be like that low-key kind of racist. But when it's in your face and you can't even deny this shit, like you can't even look at your homies like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Well, I didn't know that part about him. Think about this. I was looking at Ronald Reagan, because there was a lot of black conservatives under Ronald Reagan too. And the fact that the audio tape from the Nixon tapes just came out that Ronald Reagan was calling black folks niggers blatantly saying the N-word, right? How do you feel as a black conservative if you were supporting Ronald Reagan back in those days, espousing him as the the freaking stalwart standard bearer of conservatism? How do you feel? Black folks could have been told you that Ronald Reagan was racist. We saw the racism come out of Reaganomics. We saw the racism come out in the war on drugs policy, right? We saw that. We knew. Now y'all got him on tape, like what, 20 years after he's dead, saying actual nigger to Richard Nixon. Actually saying nigger. See what I'm saying? Nah, man. We are too wary. We've been abused too much to actually turn en masse away from what looked like common sense. We've always been liberal. Even when the Republicans was liberal, black folks was mostly Republicans, right? When the Democrats became liberal, most black folks was Democrats. That's how it worked. See what I'm saying? Thank you very much. Appreciate that, man. So listen, man, I'm about to log on off here, but like, follow, and spread this message out. If you got some black conservative friends, black Republican friends, go ahead and put this in front of them. And really be like, I need y'all to actually answer some hard-ass questions about who you think you are, because the real black conservatives are those who want to conserve black life, black identity. The true black conservatives are actually coming from the black militant wing. That's the real black conservatives. Anybody else, they're really trying to conserve black life. They're not trying to conserve black culture. They're trying to conserve their identity that they inherited from colonization, and they think the Republicans are the way to do that. I ain't down with none of that. Anyway, y'all, I'm about to log off here. My name is Theo E.J. Wilson. Like, follow, and share this message out. Send this to some of your black conservative friends, and let's have us a little debate. Holla at your boy. Peace.